I remember by the time I got to the Peter Principle, my process had evolved where I was really focused on scenes, and the idea that a scene inside the 3-act story, you've got these smaller scenes, and each scene is also a 3-act story in itself. It's also, each scene should have some kind of reversal. And what I kind of realized was that if I'd sometimes find it very overwhelming at the start to be like, to feel like I was in control of all of this story design. But if I broke it down into a scene, I could, and then just focused on that one, making that scene a little mini story about this one mini idea inside of the bigger idea, I had kind of had more control over it.
So define a scene, therefore, if you're saying that, define what would be a scene if we took the principle as one, or whatever.
So a scene is, in a sense, it's not the smallest unit of a story because that's a beat, but it's the one up from that, and it's sort of it's probably the primary unit of a story. I mean, you know, in drama, you know, a scene is someone wants something, and they try one thing or two things to try and get it, and they either get it or they don't, and the scene ends and goes to the next one. And so it's different in non-fiction storytelling, but I still, even now, I look at scenes and I'm like, what is the purpose of this scene? What is this? It can only do one thing, and that one thing has to happen here, and doing it here allows the next scene to happen. So, for example, you know, with in the Peter Principle, I mean, the very opening scene is one I can think of actually, which is it opens on the moon, floating over the moon with the Earth in the background. And the purpose usually of every opening scene in videos, the way I make them, is you meet the audience where they are, and then you flip them and you say, this thing that you think you know is not what you think it was, in a way that raises a question for the audience that then creates the purpose for scene 2. And so, you know, so I was focused that one scene, I could just take it aside from the rest of the film, put the rest of the film over there, and say, I've got this one scene here, and what I want to do is tell the story of the moon landing and how they lost the tapes. And so what is the most efficient, compelling way to do that, to achieve this one singular purpose? And so everything in it, then every decision is much clearer because it's just about solving that purpose. So, you know, opening on that shot and opening with the kind of music and the sound of NASA, that's about meeting the audience where they are. Like, you think the moon landing was this brilliant achievement for humanity, and you need to set that so you can flip it afterwards. And then so when you get to things like the visual device, of having the kind of, I wish I could remember what it was called now, but the scanner for reading old newsprint articles, you know, that in a sense was again trying to solve the same problem that we had in the Da Vinci piece, which is all of these articles are different sizes, and the headlines are different lengths. So what's a way to kind of have them all come into the same shot without looking messy? But at the same time, it also establishes a period of time, because you know, that's a device that people used only in the 80s and the 90s, which is when that part of the story was being set. So it kind of followed a logic from there, if that makes sense. And you know, I think you ought to only have one device like that, probably. If it's a short video, you kind of ideally want it to be a device that you can repeat. And I had learned from research, you know, there wasn't going to be, you know, great, you know, SOTs, news clips of people saying these things. It was all going to be headlines. So it was like, I'm going to have all of these evidentiary kind of headlines to show people. What's going to be a creative way of showing them that also has some energy to it as well, that's going to go with this kind of quirky, you know, kind of slightly oddball tone that the whole piece kind of had.